We must be careful not to get ahead of ourselves when interpreting any verse. For if we needlessly jump to conclusions, then we run the risk of attributing things to both God and the Word which ought never be attributed. For while John admits that all things were made through the Word, one should not confuse that to mean that everything currently in existence were made through the Word. What do I mean by that? In so saying, all things came into being through him, a distinction is necessary to be made. For when it says, all things, it must be made clear that this only speaks of what came into being through him. To be sure, all things does not also include anything that was not made through the Word. As such, it would be false to assume that just because something is excluded from this verse that it must necessarily be eternal. Augustine makes a good point that neither sin nor idols were made through the Word. Therefore, these things are excluded from this verse. Yet, we know that both sin and idols exist. And since we know that neither sin nor idols are eternal, it must be the case that exclusion is not evidence of eternality. And that would include the Word itself. So, from this verse we learn that all things is restricted to anything that came into being through him. From there we also learn that not everything currently in existence came through him, for that would include sin and idols, among other things. This is not to say that just because it wasn't made through him, that he has no power over these things. To be sure, all things being made through him is evidence of preeminence. And if preeminent, then he necessarily carries more weight than anything that would have come after him. Clearly, the Gospel of John is showing how significant the Word is regarding all things. For he reveals that since God made all things through the Word must be preeminent. As such, we should also regard the Word as preeminent.